The Venture Bros is mostly not even about the Venture Bros, it's mostly about their father, Rusty Venture, played by James Ubeniak. Rusty used to be a Venture boy in the cartoon, don't question it, when he went on world traveling adventures with his father, Jonas. But after he was out of the picture, Rusty continues the cycle with the Venture Bros, Hank and Dean. Their mother is a big mystery throughout the series. Hank is the blonde one who looks like Fred from Scooby-Doo, and Dean's the ginger one played by Michael Nicholas. And they travel the world for adventures and super science and all that, along with their bodyguard Brock Sampson, who's an absolute beast played by Patrick Warburton. And they mostly have to deal with the Guild of Calamitous Intent, which is a guild trying to organize villainy. The organization is led by a sovereign who may or may not be a shape-shifting David Bowie. Mostly the Ventures have to deal with the Monarch, who is someone who absolutely hates Rusty for reasons even he doesn't know. His partner is Dr. Girlfriend, later Dr. Mrs. the Monarch. She's smoking hot, but she's got a really gross voice.
I'm more worried if this makes my ass look chunky.
Oh dear.
Keep in mind, 3/5 of the cast are played by the creators of the show, Doc Hammer, who I'm pretty sure is a vampire, and Jackson Public. Those are not actually their names, but just go with it. If you have noticed, yes, the show originally started as a parody of Johnny Quest, a show about a kid named Johnny Quest going on world-traveling adventures with his father and bodyguard. That was the sort of style of early Adult Swim where they took PNGs from old Hanna-Barbera shows and just did what they want, with Venture Bros being more unique and having original animation, and not including the Johnny Quest characters. Well, until Johnny Quest actually appears in the series. And then Cartoon Network tells them, please do not use our character, and they have to rename him Action Johnny. The show quickly becomes more than just a parody of Johnny Quest, even by the end of the first season, where the Venture Bros, die. But it turns out they're clones, until they also lose all their clones, and they have to deal with the emotional trauma that, 1, they're clones, and 2, they lost their safety bed, and 3, that they were lied to and were never told they were clones. The show does this quite often. The status quo changes almost every season. Like in the last half of the show, they lose their home, but they end up moving to New York. One big theme of the series is references. There are tons and tons of references to toys, TV, comics, music, and a lot of it is not even all that mainstream. And in this very exaggerated world, it never comes off as annoying or obnoxious. It always seems like it would actually happen in this world. A good example is the Brown Widow. Jared is not just an anatomically correct Spider-Man parody that shoots webs out of his butt, but he's also a music reference because he's directly a reference to the 1970 live-action Spider-Man, who was in Sound of Music. When the show began, the Venture Bros were meant to be, oh ha ha, it's named after them, but they're not really important. And they're both basically the exact same. But the show goes on, they do become slightly more important and actually have original characters to each other, with Dean being a little more sensitive and depressed that he's a clone, and Hank just rolling with the punches and being a little goofball. But he's still human, does feel bad sometimes. It's just he often is just a carefree guy. The animation in the show is amazing, with incredible lighting and great painted backgrounds, with each background looking completely unique and wonderful, just like the character designs. And each character is also awesome. The show is chock full of characters, such as 21, who you think would just be a one-off nerdy henchman of the Monarch, but he keeps reoccurring. He even has a big storyline where his best friend dies, which motivates him to get into better shape. Eventually, Gary becomes the Monarch's only henchman and even best friend. Or characters like Dr. Orpheus, who's Doctor Strange but also a single dad and absolutely hilarious.
Do not be too hasty entering that room. I had Taco Bell for lunch. Expert witness, Dr. Byron Orpheus.
He has his own crew, the Order of the Triad, with the Alchemist, played by Master Shake, and Jefferson Twilight, who's basically middle-aged Blade, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and he only hunts Blackulas. And there's Shore Leave, who's super flamboyant, but he totally makes it work, and he's super badass. And there's Dermot, who's a total D-bag, but Hank likes him because he's literally the only boy his age he's ever met who's not Dean. Oh, and then there's Red Dev, played by Clancy Brown, who comes in at the tail end of the show. I love this guy. He's absolutely horrifying and sadistic, but he's also comedically a really nice dad, which is kind of something he shares in common with Brock, who is this killing machine, but he's also Team Mom.
Hey, no indoor football! Outside!
Okay, we were just,
Sorry, Brock.
And then there's Pete White and Billy Quizboy. Billy's a really smart guy who actually wants to help people, unlike most of the cast. And Pete's his albino deadbeat friend who just kind of follows him around. I could literally gush about the show all day long, but it's not perfect. But if you really want to hear an individual episode-by-episode review, watch Into the Venture first. But continuing on my analysis of the series, another big theme of the series is failure, which Rusty shows completely, on how he fails to live up to his public persona.
I'm Rusty Venture. Why can't you kids wrap your heads around that?
What happened?
I left Neverland so I could marry Wendy. What do you think happened?
He fails to live up to a public persona which never really captured himself and how his life was kind of messed up. In modern times, Doc is very pathetic, and honestly, you kind of feel for him and how bad his life is, constantly dealing with supervillainy and big science. But he does definitely step into the villain role a lot, and is also the same guy who stole kidneys from his sons. But just like a lot of people, he struggles to live up to the impossible standards of his great Chad father, who is this womanizing monster who did terrible things, but he's also this icon that Rusty has to live up to, which he just can't. Which is something that Dean also struggles with, where Dean feels really bad that he's a clone and wants nothing to do with super science. But Hank sees all this failure and thinks it's funny, just like the show does. Failure is pretty funny, and failure is also a really good teacher in life. You just gotta learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. And yeah, the show does a lot of deconstructionism, such as with Captain Sunshine, who's kind of both Superman and Batman, played by animated series Batman. Instead of doing the generic stuff like, oh, what if Superman was real, it would be really messed up. Instead, they take the idea of, oh, Superman was real, he would be this kind of weird Michael Jackson guy. And the show also definitely makes it clear that superheroes, good and evil, are just roles we play.
He vows revenge, and then you tell him that good always triumphs over evil.
Does it?
Of course not. Now get out there and get this crap over with. You're blocking
The
traffic.
guild organizes villainy, and it's basically just dress up for rich people to fight the OSI, the Office of Secret Intelligence, which Brock works for, which is basically S.H.I.E.L.D. mixed with G.I. Joe. And the show deals with Brock might be Team Mom, and he really cares about the boys, but he's also inevitably just a tool of the system.
You work for the government.
What about humanity and empathy and all that garbage?
Who cares? You're a tool, boy. A tool! Built for a single purpose by the United States of shut your third damn eye for a fucking reason. You can't teach a hammer to love nails, son.
The show is so good, I could literally talk about it all day long. Unfortunately, Adult Swim canceled the series midway through development of a next season, just like with Aqua Team Hunger Force and Metalocalypse, for very poor reasons. But Venture Bros is getting a finale movie to wrap at least most things up, which by the time of I'm recording this should be releasing soon. I am a little upset we didn't get even more show, but as is, Season 1 might be a little bit hard to get through, and there is surprisingly not as many episodes as you would think from a show that's been going on for 20 years. But overall, I love the Venture Bros. I love its characters, I love its animation. Hank is someone you should live up to and live by. I love the comedy, I love its themes and messaging, I love its characters, and overall, go Team Venture.